The smell of rot and damp stone clung to him like the weight of failure. Eddard Stark, once warden of the North, lay curled on the cold dungeon floor beneath the Red Keep. The torchlight flickered weakly through the barred window of his cell, casting jagged shadows across the bruises on his face. He had confessed to treason to save his daughters. That was the only truth left that mattered. He'd lied to keep them alive. But the Godsor, something far less divine, had other plans. It began with a whisper in the dark, a soft voice from the shadows, too smooth to be a rat skitter. "Lord Stark, you still believe in honor?" He opened his eyes slowly. The man standing before him wore the uniform of a Lannister guard, but something was off. His voice, for one, his stance, for another. Too graceful, too alert. "Who are you?" Ned rasped, his throat raw from days of silence. "No one," the man said simply, unlocking the cell with a key pulled from beneath his armor. "Let's just say your son Robb is not the only wolf." With allies, the next moments blurred together. A cloak thrown over his shoulders, a secret stairwell beneath the dungeons, narrow and choking with dust. The guard led him silently through catacombs forgotten by most, their footsteps muffled by ancient stone. Above them, the city celebrated. Joffrey's coronation had filled the streets with drunken cheers and fools' laughter. And then, fresh air. Ned stumbled as they emerged into the dark alley behind a tanner's shop. His legs screamed in protest, but the wind on his face, real air, not prison stench, was a salvation. "Why?" he asked again, leaning on the strange rescuer. "Because war is coming," the man replied, eyes scanning the rooftops. "And your death would have sealed a different kind of peace, one written in your family's blood." They moved swiftly now. Horses waited beyond the riverbank, cloaked in night. A barge took them down the black water under cover of darkness. The man still nameless spoke little, only confirming that Arya was missing, and Sansa remained captive in the Red Keep. Ned's heart twisted at the news, but he swallowed the despair. Honor had cost him everything. This time, he would move with something called a purpose. By dawn, they rode into a small woodsman's cabin near the Kingswood. There, the man finally removed his helmet. Grey eyes, narrow face. "Call me Harlan," he said. "I was once of House Rainby, for your friend Tywin Lannister had us slaughtered. I help where I can." Ned studied him carefully. "And you expect what in return?" "Justice," Harlan said quietly. "Not just for me, for everyone who's had their house burned down in the name of a lion." Ned rested heavily on the bench beside the fire. His mind, still fogged from days in the dark, tried to piece together what this meant. He wasn't dead. The kingdom believed he was. The Starks were now symbols of rebellion, and Robb. He had to get to Robb. But first, they had to cross half. The kingdom in secret, with spies on every road and gold cloaks hunting for ghosts. If anyone saw him alive, it would unravel everything. Worse, the Lannisters would tighten their grip, and Sansa's life would be the first price paid. He was no longer a lord, no longer warden of the North. That man died on the steps of Bella Sept. Now, he was a ghost with a wolf's heart, and he was going to war. The fire crackled low in the cabin, casting flickers of orange across Ned's weathered face. He barely recognized himself any more than bruised, bearded beyond decency. His body ached with each movement, but it was the ache of survival, and it fed the fire in his chest. He had been a prisoner, a traitor, a broken father. Now he would be something else entirely. Harlan Rain sat, sharpening a knife with quiet, meticulous rhythm. We ride west at dusk, he said, not looking up. Through the Blackwater rush, then north. Avoid Gold Road. Lannister patrols sweep it day and night. Ned nodded, and we reach Riverrun. If luck holds, your son's not sitting idle. Robb Stark is building a reputation. Wolves biting lions. Rumors say he's already captured Jaime Lannister. Ned's eyes narrowed. Captured. Alive. Harlan smirked. Apparently, he begged the young wolf for death. Didn't get it. Stark boy plays it colder than you ever did. The news gave Ned a strange mix of pride and dread. Robb was only a boy, raised on tales of honor and oaths. War turned boys into Wolvesor monsters. They moved quickly when the sun began to dip, both wearing dirt-stained cloaks and faces drawn tight with fatigue. Harlan knew paths no map held, weaving through farmers' roads and smugglers' trails. Twice they avoided patrols' gold cloaks. Too drunk to walk straight, and Lannister scouts with eyes only for banners. By the third night, Ned had begun to dream again. Not the good kind. He saw Sansa crying alone in the Red Keep. Arya lost, hiding in the gutters of a city built to devour little girls. He saw Catelyn's face, twisted by the fear of never knowing. Every dream ended with a blade flashing beneath Bella Sept. Each morning he woke, gasping. By the 6th day, they arrived at a small riverside village. Smoke rose from a barn. Crows circled overhead. No sounds of life. Harlan raised a hand. Stay here. He crept forward, but Ned followed anyway, refusing to hide like a coward again. The stench hit them before the sight did. Burned wood, charred flesh. Inside the barn, the bodies of farmers and children lay piled, blackened and stiff. A Lannister banner fluttered half-burned in the doorway. They don't even pretend anymore, Harlan muttered. This is what happens when lions are given thrones. Ned knelt beside a small body, blonde hair. A girl no older than Arya. Her eyes were open, staring into nothing. This war isn't about thrones anymore, he said coldly. It's about what kind of world will be left after. They buried the dead in silence. Not all, just the children. The rest would have to wait for the gods. That night, Harlan revealed a letter from Riverruna. Secret code, sealed in wax, shaped like a fish. Your wife sent it, Harlan said. Didn't think you'd live to read it. Ned broke the seal with shaking hands. It was brief. They call him king in the north. He misses his father. Come to us if you still breathe. The night is darker than it has ever been, and our children are the only light we have left. His eyes welled, but he didn't let the tears fall. We ride at dawn. No more detours. Harlan raised an eyebrow. Even if they're watching. The river, Ned nodded. Let them watch. Let them hunt. If they think I'm a ghost, then it's time the ghost of Ned Stark haunts the Lannister. They rode through rain and wind, dodging watchtowers and bribing a pair of black brothers heading north. Word was spreading like fire. The young wolf marched. The riverlands rose, and winter had not forgotten. But even as hope grew stronger, so did the danger. At the edge of the Whispering Wood, they were ambushed. Crossbows snapped from the trees. Harlan shoved Ned down just as a bolt ripped through the air. They rolled into the mud, swords drawn, but it wasn't Lannister. A dozen men in worn armor circled them, faces hidden beneath hoods and patched cloaks. The leader stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a scarred face and a cruel smile. Well, well, he said. Thought you were dead, Stark. Ned's blood froze. It was Seer Meryn Trant, and he wasn't here for mercy. The rain came down harder as Ned stood face to face with Sir Marin Trant. The man looked worse for where his armor dented, beard unkempt, and a dark glint of cruelty still alive in his eyes. But the sword in his hand gleamed like it had just drawn blood. Beside him, his men fanned out, outnumbering Ned and Harlan 6-1. Well, well, Trant said again, circling them. I was there when your pretty head was meant to roll. Imagine my surprise hearing whispers that the old wolf lives. Harlan's sword was already out, body tense, eyes tracking every movement. We don't have time for this, he muttered. To Ned, you're right, Ned replied calmly, lifting his own blade. Then let's make it quick. The first move came fast. One of Trant's men lunged Harlan, turned with fluid motion, ducked under the swing, and buried his knife into the man's gut. The forest exploded into motion. Steel rang out as trees shook from the struggle. Ned fought like a man possessed not for vengeance, not even for survival, but for Rob, for his daughters, for Catelyn's letter. His body ached with every movement, but muscle memory carried him through. He parried 2 blows and drove his sword upward into a thug's throat. Blood sprayed warm on his face. Trant fought like a butcher, slashing wide and wild, laughing as he cut one of his own men who stumbled in the way. You should have died a hero, Trant sneered. Now you'll die like a dog in the dirt. You mistake me for a man who still plays by the rules, Ned growled back, locking blades with him. Harlan dropped another attacker with a swift slice across the throat. We need to go, he shouted, but Trant had no intention of letting them. He feinted left, then brought his blade up toward Ned's side. Ned turned just in time, but the blade caught his ribs, slicing shallow but bloody. The pain dropped him to one knee. Trant grinned and raised his sword for the killing blow. Then an arrow took him in the shoulder. He screamed, staggered back. Another arrow hit one of his men in the neck. Chaos erupted. Out of the woods came 6 riders in grey cloaks, bearing the direwolf sigil. A young man at the front dismounted before his horse even stopped, his red hair plastered to his head by rain, face pale, eyes wide with shock. Father, it was Rob. Ned couldn't speak. He barely had time to register his son's face before falling forward into the mud. When he awoke, he was lying in a tent, fire burning nearby, and the dull, constant ache in his side telling him he was still alive. His ribs had been wrapped in bandages, his beard had been trimmed, and clean clothes rested by the cot. Rob sat beside him, armor removed, his sword laid across his knees. He looked older, harder. Ned reached out weakly. You found me. Rob didn't smile. We were hunting Trant's dogs. I didn't expect to find you in the middle of the woods, bleeding like a hog. I escaped, Ned said hoarsely. The dungeons, King's Landing. They think I'm dead. Rob nodded, but his jaw tightened. And now you've returned to a kingdom on fire. Ned slowly sat up, grimacing. Tell me everything, Rob began. Of war, of Jaime's capture, of the Lannisters burning the Riverland, of Sansa still held hostage, of Arya missing, of Renly's ambitions and Stannis' silence, of Bannerman with divided loyalties, and whispers of dragons across the sea. By the time he finished, the fire had died to embers, and Ned Stark's face was no longer that of a tired man. It was the face of a wolf returned from the grave. I will not hide, Ned said. The North needs to know its warden lives. But I cannot lead openly. Not yet. Then what? Rob asked, his voice tight. I will be your shadow, Ned replied. Your ghost, let the world believe I haunt the south, while you lead the north. He looked Robb in the eyes, and we bring down the lions together. Asterisk the camp buzzed with quiet awe the next morning. Word spread fast through Robb Stark's. Host, the old wolf lives. It wasn't shouted or written, it moved in whispers between tents, a secret wrapped in awe and disbelief. Many dismissed it as superstition. Others claimed it was a trick of the gods, that Eddard Stark had returned from death to avenge his family. But Robb knew the truth, and so did his most loyal men. They kept Ned's presence hidden. He remained in a black tent at the far edge of the encampment, guarded not by banners but by silence. Only trusted captains Greyjohn Umber, Mage Mormont, and a few others were allowed to see him. Most were stunned to silence. One or two wept. None questioned his will. I'm not here to take back my title, Ned told them. Robb is your king and I will not steal that from him. Then what are you here for, Lord Stark? Mage Mormont had asked. Her voice edged with fire. Ned had looked her dead in the eye. To destroy the Lannisters from the inside out. That was the beginning. Ned wrote letters in the shadows of the tent, his broken hand stiff as it gripped the quill. One to Catelyn live and safe. One to Howland Reed, his oldest and most mysterious friend, hidden deep in the neck, and others to quiet allies still within King's Landing, including a man he hoped had not turned completely, Varys. But Varys wasn't the only one on Ned's mind. Littlefinger, he growled one night, pacing despite the pain in his ribs. He betrayed me, sold me to the Lannisters. Then let me slit his throat, Harlan said without hesitation. No, Ned said. He's worth more alive. Petier Baelish plays games with kingdoms. It's time someone rigged the board against him. Harlan didn't look convinced. That kind of snake doesn't die with patience. He dies when he no longer sees the blade coming. Plans began to take shape. Quiet, methodical, brutal plans. Meanwhile, Robb's war campaign pushed forward. Ned remained in the shadows, moving at night from camp to camp, speaking only with key commanders. Every move Robb made began to carry a sharper edge, guided not just by youthful fury but seasoned knowledge. Riverrun had become their stronghold. There, Ned was finally reunited with Catelyn. She entered the chamber slowly, her eyes wide and trembling. She said nothing as she walked forward, touched his face, and broke into sobs against his chest. I saw your head on the steps, she wept. I saw you die. I did too, he said softly. But the gods weren't done with us yet. They held each other like they had after Benjen vanished, like they had after Bran's fall, like no words could fill the ache of loss returned. But joy was short-lived. War demanded more than sentiment. I want to go to King's Landing. Ned said that night, after everyone had gone. Catelyn's eyes widened. You just escaped that place. I can't destroy them from here. They think I'm dead. I need to use that. It's suicide. It's strategy. She shook her head, tears building again. Our daughters are there. I know, that's why I have to go. And so, another plan was born. Harlan would accompany Ned into the south again, this time not as a fleeing fugitive, but as a ghost with purpose, disguised, veiled by whispers and shadows. They'd infiltrate the cracks of the capital and find those willing to bleed the lion from within. Before they left, Ned stood beside Robb on the banks of the Red Fork. You've grown stronger than I ever imagined, he said. But don't let your victories blind you. The North follows you because they believe in you. Never give them reason to doubt. Robb looked at him, jaw tight. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," Ned said, clapping a hand on his son's shoulder. "But you won't see me either, not until it's time." That night, as the moon rose high over Riverrun, the ghost of Ned Stark vanished once more, this time not to die, but to kill. He was no longer Lord Stark of Winterfell. He was the storm coming for the throne. King's Landing had not changed. It still reeked of sweat and secrets, piss and perfume, gold and rot. But to Ned Stark, it felt different now. He was no longer a prisoner in chains. He was a ghost slipping through its alleys, unseen by the very people who had once demanded his head. Disguised as a merchant's guard, clad in southern leather and grime, Ned moved through the lower city with Harlan by his side. His beard was trimmed, his gait slow to mask the stiffness in his ribs, but his eyes burned. He had returned to the Lion's Den not to plead for justice, but to bleed the beast from within. They took up shelter in a brothel near Fleabottom, one known more for privacy than pleasure. The madam owed Harlan an old debt, something about a lost child and a Lannister who never paid. She didn't ask questions when they arrived. Room upstairs, doors locked. "Walls don't talk," she muttered, tossing a key to Harlen. Ned sat by the window each night, watching the Red Keep loom in the distance, like a scar on the city. Somewhere within those walls, Sansa was trapped in a golden cage. Somewhere, Cersei drank her wine and whispered lies. And somewhere, Petyr Baelish played his game. Unaware, the board had changed. The first move came quietly, a letter, slipped into the robes of a merchant heading to the castle kitchens. Inside, a simple phrase: "The wolf lives. The lion will starve." Harlan raised an eyebrow when Ned handed it off. "Old code?" he asked. "Older than you know," Ned replied. Within days, he received a reply hidden in the hollow of a statue, in the Sept of Baelor, where his execution had nearly been carried out. "Then let the rats eat the lion from the inside. The spider is listening. Varys, still playing both sides, but useful for now." Next, they began gathering whispers. Gold Cloaks were restless, their loyalties wavering after the chaos of Ned's so-called execution. Some suspected Joffrey's rule was a little more than Cersei's puppet show. Others resented the brutality Seer Meryn had employed before his mysterious disappearance. Harlan did the recruiting. Quiet and careful, 3 Gold Cloaks joined them in the first week, then 5, then 2 kitchen boys who overheard too much, then a merchant whose daughter had been taken by Lannister guards for the prince's amusement. The underbelly of the capital began to stir, and all the while Ned remained invisible. He studied Littlefinger's movements from afar, always guarded, always calculating. Baelish had risen higher than ever, whispering into Cersei's ear, manipulating the small council, growing his brothels and bribes like roots beneath a rotten tree. "I need to draw him out," Ned said one night. Harlan frowned. "He thinks you're dead. If he sees you, he won't," Ned interrupted. "But he'll feel me." That's when they planted the forged letter. It spoke of a bastard Joffrey's half-brother hidden somewhere in the Reach, a claim to the throne, a danger to the Lannisters, and a whisper that it had come from a surviving Stark loyalist in the city. Littlefinger read it. Ned made sure of it, and just as predicted, Baelish sent a silent assassin to handle the threat. Harlan intercepted the assassin before he reached the docks. By the time he was done questioning him, Ned had everything he needed. Scared, Harlan said. Baelish doesn't know what's real anymore. Good, Ned muttered. Let fear do the work. But not all the news was good. That evening, Various sent a message. Your daughter grows weaker. The Queen controls her meals, her letters, even her dreams. She speaks only when spoken to. The lioness sharpens her claws. Ned read the note in silence. He felt the old rage stir the fury that had nearly gotten him, killed the first time. But now he forced himself calm. I need to see her, he whispered. That's impossible, Harlan said. She's guarded night and day. If you go near the keep, you won't come back. I'll find a way. That night, Ned sat alone by the fire, gripping the letter until his knuckles turned white. They had his daughter, and they believed he was gone soon. They'd learn just how wrong they were, 3 days later, under the cloak of midnight fog, Ned Stark moved silently through the shadowed alleys behind the Red Keep. The city above was still drunken revelers, snoring in alleys. Gold cloaks, gambling near torchlit corners, but in the tunnels beneath, silence ruled. Varys had arranged this meeting, reluctantly. The Spider always claimed neutrality, but his voice in the letter was laced with something unfamiliar, dread. You will see her, but only once. If they suspect anything, she dies first. The passageway smelled of mold and old stone. Harlan stayed behind at the entrance, blade in hand and nerves drawn tight like a bowstring. Ned walked alone, his boots echoing softly across damp cobbles. Every step brought memories of court, of pride, of betrayal. He was walking back into the heart of the beast. A door appeared at the tunnel's end. Heavy oak, iron-banded, half swallowed by the roots of the keep above. It opened before he touched it, and there she was, Sansa. She stood in a simple dress, pale and thin, her hair braided with trembling fingers. The room smelled of lavender and stale fear. She looked older, though she could only be 14 now. Her eyes, once bright with songs and dreams, were dulled. Hollow, father. Ned didn't speak. He walked toward her slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, and dropped to one knee. His hands reached for hers, gently, as though afraid she'd vanish. I'm here, he said. She gasped, a sound somewhere between a sob and disbelief. They said, you died. They said, I know. I had to let them believe it. Tears spilled from her eyes, but she didn't fall into him. She looked around first, afraid, always afraid. Does the Queen know? No, and she never can. Sansa shook her head. You don't understand. She listens through the walls. They have spies everywhere. If they find out you're alive, they won't. But Joffrey, he'll kill me. He kills animals. For fun, he made me look at Father Seer Ilyn's sword every day. He says he wants to use it again. Ned's heart clenched, fury rising in his throat. I swear, on the old gods and the new heel, never touch you again. She squeezed his hand tightly then, finally collapsing into his arms. She cried silently, the kind of crying that didn't shake the room, just leaked sorrow like a crack in stone. He held her the way he had when she was small and scared of storms. But now, the storm was inside her. He didn't tell her everything, only that Arya was missing but alive, that Robb led an army and the North remembered. He didn't tell her he planned to burn the city from the inside, or that Cersei's days were numbered. Some truths were too heavy for one so broken. I'll come for you again, he said, though he didn't know when or how. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Don't, you'll die. Let me be the prisoner. Just stay alive, please. It broke him more than any sword. Varys appeared in the shadows moments later, his soft shoes silent as breath. The Queen's hand is in the council chamber. If she returns and you're found, I'm going, Ned said. He turned back to Sansa. Stay strong. Listen to them. Obey when you must. But remember who you are. You are a Stark of Winterfell. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. And winter is coming. He left her there in the cold chamber, each step away tearing something from him. Back in the tunnels, Harlan was waiting, sword drawn. Well, he asked. She's still alive, Ned replied, voice hollow. And you? Ned didn't answer. They returned to the brothel without speaking. But Ned didn't sleep that night. He stared out the window, watching the flickering lights of the castle. This time, he wouldn't act out of honor. This time, he would act with fire and vengeance. The Lannisters thought they'd silenced the wolf, but he was still here, and he had teeth. The days that followed passed like sharpening stones, grinding away the last of Ned Stark's mercy. Every move was deliberate now. Every whisper gathered, every coin exchanged, every ally turned was a blow struck in the dark. The people still believed Eddard Stark had died on the steps of Bella's Sept. That lie became his greatest weapon. The plan took shape quietly. First, they poisoned the lion's food not to kill, but to frighten. A Lannister cousin fell ill at a feast, vomiting blood onto his gilded doublet. Cersei had the kitchen boys flogged and hanged. The people whispered of cursed wine and northern ghosts. Fear began to spread. Next, they forged letters from Tywin's own hand, full of false order-stroop movements, false confessions, threats. Copies were slipped into the hands of Baratheon loyalists. Mistrust among the small council turned to paranoia. Petyr Baelish grew restless, his control over the city's finances slipping with each confused message. Even he, the master manipulator, began to flinch. Then came the fire. A grain store on the edge of Flea Bottom, owned by a Lannister merchant, went up in flames. Ned's men made sure the fire didn't spread to the homes nearby. It was a message. The people wouldn't burn, but the lion would. And still, no one knew Ned Stark lived. But soon, it wasn't enough. The time for shadows is ending, he told Harlan one morning, his hands wrapped tight in a black cloak. They need to feel my teeth. Harlan frowned. You want to go public? No, not yet. I want to take a lion's head. In the open, one they won't see coming. Who? Ned didn't hesitate. Joffrey, Harlan blinked. You want to assassinate the king? I want to end the boy who murdered my men, imprisoned my daughters, and mocks my name while sitting on my throne. It's a death sentence. It's justice. They planned for 3 days. Joffrey's movements were erratic. Moment he sat in court with his mother, bored and cruel. The next he hunted whores through the alleyways with Seer Burrows. But every week, like clockwork, he rode through the city with his Kingsguard to greet the commoners. It's a performance, Varys confirmed. Meeting them in a candlelit room beneath the sept, he shows his face, throws coins, and waits for the cheers, which grow quieter each week, I assure you. That's when we strike, Ned said. They assembled a team 6 men, all loyal, all silent. Gold cloaks turned, farmers with nothing left to lose, even a knight who had lost a son to Lannister justice. The plan was simple. Joffrey would pass by the statue of Baelor the Blessed. That was where Ned had nearly lost his head. Now, it would be where the Boy King lost his. The morning arrived overcast and quiet. No cheers, no song. The city watched as Joffrey's golden armor gleamed atop his white horse, flanked by King. Sansa was not beside him, had made sure of that. She had been locked in her chamber the night before by Varys's order, for her safety. Ned stood in the crowd, cloak drawn, hood low, eyes fixed on the boy who had ruined his house. Harlan waited in a window above with a crossbow. Others stood at each alley. They didn't need a war, just one clean moment. But fate is a cruel thing. Just as Harlan raised his weapon, Siamandon Moore pulled his horse closer to Joffrey, disrupting the formation. Harlan's bolt struck armor, not flesh. Chaos erupted. Screams tore through the square. Gold cloaks drew swords. People scattered. Ned moved instinctively. He pushed through the crowd, grabbed the arm of a guard who had raised his blade toward a fleeing child, and drove his dagger into the man's neck. Joffrey was bleeding minor, but enough to panic. He screamed and cursed, demanding heads, blaming Tyrion, blaming his mother. But Ned was already gone, vanishing into the crowd with Harlan. The assassination had failed, but the legend had begun. That night, the city whispered of a ghost in the crowd, of a blade in the throat, of the king's blood spilled on the stones where he once ordered a Stark to die. Cersei doubled her guard. Baelish began fleeing coin out of the city. Varys whispered, "The lion's teeth are chattering," and in the shadows, Ned Stark sharpened the next blow. They had missed their shot, but next time, they wouldn't. The city didn't sleep after the attempt on Joffrey's life. The Red Keep turned into a fortress. Gold cloaks patrolled the streets in brutal waves, dragging anyone with northern features into cells. Cersei barked orders through, clenched teeth, her paranoia boiling into open rage. Baelish withdrew from public view. Varys sent no messages for 2 days. But Ned Stark, he didn't run. He prepared for the endgame. "They know you're here now," Harlan said, his face pale as ash. "It's only a matter of time." "Then let them come," Ned replied. "I've lived in their shadows. Now, they'll burn in mine." From their safe house near the Dragon Pit ruins, Ned issued his final orders. His network now over 24 strong planted fires, poisoned food reserves, and fed false leads to Cersei's spies. Every noble that whispered Lannister loyalty found their guards missing, their banners defaced with wolf sigils drawn in blood. And while the Red Keep bristled behind stone and steel, the city itself turned against the lions. The small folk grew, louder in their hatred. Murmurs of rebellion turned to shouted threats. The name Stark returned, not in shame, but reverence. They began to say it aloud. "Ned Stark lives." Cersei was the first to act. She ordered Sansa dragged into the throne room. Publicly, chained and pale, the girl collapsed before the iron throne, her lip bleeding, her voice gone. "She dies at sunrise," Cersei declared, "unless the ghost who haunts my city surrenders." The court watched in silence. No one cheered, no one moved. And far across the city, Ned stood frozen. A message burned into his chest. He had returned to kill the lion, but now they would kill his cub. He didn't sleep that night. Harlan tried to talk him down. "There's no clean way out. If you go back in, it's a trap. They want your head on a spike." "They'll have it," Ned whispered, after they choke on their own blood. He sent word to Varys with one final command: empty the keep's eastern passage, one way out, for her. And then, as the first light touched the towers, Ned Stark walked into the Red Keep, alone, dressed not as a beggar nor a ghost, but as a lord. Northern leather, grey cloak, sword at his side. He walked straight through the main gate, past stunned guards, past drawn blades. They recognized him. None dared stop him. In the throne room, Cersei stood with her chin high in venom in her smile. Sansa knelt, hands tied, eyes wide in disbelief. "Well," Cersei drawled, "the dead really do walk." "Release her," Ned said. "And what will you give in return?" "Your head, your confession, your pride." She laughed. "You already gave me those once." Joffrey sat on the Iron Throne, still bandaged. He sneered, "Kill him, mother. Let's see if he dies properly this time." "No," Cersei said. "Not yet. Not before we make an example." But her words were cut off by the sudden crash of steel. Harlan, he had come anyway, bolstering through the side door with 6 gold cloaks who had flipped allegiance in secret. Chaos erupted. Blades clashed. Men screamed. Ned rushed forward, slashing down a guard who had moved toward Sansa. Harlan tossed him a dagger and shouted, "Take her, go." But Ned didn't run. He looked at Cersei, eyes wide now, trapped by the fire she thought she controlled. And he did something no one expected. He threw down his sword. "I surrender," Cersei blinked. "What, you want the ghost?" he said, voice loud enough for all to hear. "You want Ned Stark's head?" He knelt beside Sansa then. "Take it." A beat of silence. Then Harlan screamed, "No," and charged at Seer Burrows. But it was too late. Cersei's orders came sharp. "Do it." Ned looked up at his daughter, his voice low. "Run, don't look back." The blade came swift. The hall fell into madness. But Sansa was gone, dragged through the side passage by Varys' whisperers. Harlan disappeared in the smoke. Cersei screamed for order as her guards dropped like flies from poison-slicked blades. Joffrey cried for help. The Iron Throne sat crooked, stained red. Ned Stark's body fell, but the wolf didn't die that day. His death became fire. Across Westeros, the truth emerged. Ned Stark had lived, returned, and given his life to save his daughter and destroy the Lannisters' illusion of control. The North howled louder than ever. Riverrun flew its banners high. Robb Stark marched again, and from the ashes of a broken throne room the legend was born. The wolf died so his pack could live.